Welcome to CNU Talks, Beyond the Great Lawn. CNU Talks is a virtual learning program created by and for the CNU community. Many of your beloved faculty and fellow captains will share topics which elicit thought and compassion, stimulate intellect, and connect us in profound ways. Today, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Molly Waters, Professor of Leadership Studies at Christopher Newport University. Dr. Waters is an alumna of CNU and has found her passion in teaching leadership, communication, and honors with her alma mater for nearly a decade. While at CNU, she has taught numerous study abroad courses in South Africa, as well as through Oxford University in England. In addition to teaching, Dr. Waters consults governments at the state and local level in areas of physician leadership, bioethics, and crisis leadership. She also holds a secret security clearance and advises hospitals across the United States. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Waters has acted as a liaison between various scientists, epidemiologists, and local governments. Her recent work with colleague Dr. Elizabeth Gagnon has been to develop a newly offered course exploring crisis leadership and the coronavirus. Through this course, CNU students will be given the unique opportunity to explore how the virus creates gaps in social justice and challenges and reframes leadership. We hope today that you will enjoy, as much as we do, CNU Talks.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Molly Waters and I am here to talk to you a little bit about COVID-19 and leadership. So I was super excited to be invited to do a CNU talk, and I hope that some of the information that I'm going to share with you is helpful or may help you think about things a little bit differently. Today I'm going to talk to you about a course that I'm teaching that surrounds leadership and COVID-19. I'm also going to talk to you about something called the boom effect as it relates to leadership and just what's going on in the world in terms of crisis leadership in general. So a little bit about my background. I teach the courses here at CNU that are focusing on leadership in healthcare. So I look at more of the social sciences aspect of healthcare and what does leadership look like within that setting. So I do a lot with bioethics and have worked quite a bit with hospitals and different government agencies consulting, but COVID has actually ramped that up, and I've been working a lot as a liaison between different government groups. So I've gotten to hear a lot about COVID-19 on the inside and a lot of things that are happening that are not necessarily as widespread in the media. So it's given me a little bit of a unique perspective to learn more about what's going on and kind of puts me in a good place to be able to teach my students about what's really going on with COVID and leadership. So every year in May, I have the unique opportunity with a colleague of mine, Dr. Elizabeth Gagnon, to take a group of CNU students down to South Africa. We study at a university down there called Stellenbosch University, and we are in the middle of South African wine country. It's beautiful. And we have the faculty from Stellenbosch University come and teach our students about the unique South African history of apartheid. And then we look at the leadership, South African leadership, as it relates to apartheid and social injustices. We study a lot about Nelson Mandela, and it's a really great cultural and learning experience for CNU students. Because of COVID-19, that was canceled. So we knew our trip was canceled in March. And that was heartbreaking for us because we absolutely love going down there to South Africa. We love seeing our colleagues and friends down there. We've made some really great relationships, but we knew that traveling to South Africa was not going to be an option this year. So we started thinking about opportunities that we could still teach a class, But how could we pull in current world events and things that were going on? How could we pull all of that in and still use the social justice aspect, still use the leadership aspect? And we thought, what better course to teach right now, currently, than a course on leadership in COVID-19? So we created a course called Leadership for Social Justice, specifically to COVID-19. So what we have been doing is kind of looking at two main points, two things. We've been looking at leaders and how they are handling crisis. We're looking at the social injustice that we're realizing is happening in the United States as a result of COVID-19, which I'll get into in just a minute. So, but first, I kind of wanted to give a brief overview about COVID-19 and why it has become such a big deal. It's a novel virus. It is new to humans. We don't have any way to fight it because we've never been exposed to it. Coronaviruses in and of themselves are not new to humans. This specific strain of coronaviruses is new to humans, which is why it's considered novel. What's unique, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, is that this virus isn't more powerful than any other virus. But when it enters the human body, we have no pre-existing defenses because our body does not immediately recognize it as a dangerous intruder. We don't have any defenses because we've never had it before. So the virus kind of moves about our body before our immune system kicks in. And by the time that happens and starts to build defenses, sometimes the immune system goes into hyperdrive. It just goes into overdrive and it can't keep up. So as a result, some people do get very, very sick. Of the people who get sick, some just can't keep up. And this is why we're seeing, and you're going to hear my dog. This is why we're seeing the death toll so high, is because it's new and because people who are immune compromised or the elderly who don't have very strong immune systems cannot fight it. So their immune system going into overdrive actually hurts the body at the same time it's trying to help it. Many people actually do not show a whole lot of symptoms with this. For those people who are healthy and typically don't get sick, if you did get COVID-19, you would probably feel pretty terrible, but chances are a few weeks down, you'd be okay. So 83% of people who have COVID-19 are tired. About 75% people have a headache, not much lower than that. 70% people have fever. But for a lot of people, when we're tired, we have a headache or a low-grade fever, we continue to go about our business. We continue to go to the store. We continue to go to work because we think, oh, I'm just run down and it's just a minor cold. The problem is that this is what was happening. And because our bodies have no ability to fight this virus, it spreads very, very quickly. And about 5% of people do not actually have any symptoms. They don't show any of the normal signs of a virus. They don't have the headache. They don't have the fever. They don't have the fatigue. So this virus, it is very scary because we are still learning about it. It seems to be changing. There's a lot of data that is coming out weekly. And so what we wanted to do with the class is look at how this virus has challenged, reframed, and changed leadership. What are we learning about our society and our culture as a whole as we respond to this? And we decided to pull in crisis leadership. So a lot of people will look at this idea of crisis leadership and think that it's just, managing something during chaotic times. That's a little bit of it, but I know many of us, we throw the word crisis around all the time. I'm having a midlife crisis, or I'm having an emotional crisis, or I'm having a mini crisis. But one of the things that I think is really important to note is that if you look at crisis from an academic standpoint, a crisis is the moment when a decision is necessary. There is no time to really wait and let's see what happens. A crisis in terms of leadership is the moment when a decision is necessary. And COVID-19 is so much more than a health crisis. It is a global pandemic. It is the global health crisis of our time, spreading to every continent with the exception of Antarctica. And for every country that it touches, we are just seeing so many people sick. The death count keeps rising. It is going to be, and it has the potential to be, and we're starting to see the impacts of it being devastating on a social, economic, and political level that will leave deep scars. They say it is the biggest crisis and greatest challenge since World War II, and how World War II completely changed the way that things were done. So a couple things about crisis is that a lot of times you can't plan for a crisis. There's clearly a time element. You don't know it's coming, and it often produces instability. And what I have done in the class with my colleague, Dr. Gagnon, we have really asked the students, how do you describe COVID-19 in terms of crisis? And, many people have talked a lot about it in our class, but one of the things that they have really said is they've talked about the economic impact. They've talked about testing shortages and how there's a lot of people who don't have the ability to seek out healthcare. They've talked about the educational impacts and what does it look like for the students who don't have access to the internet and cannot do virtual learning. And as a result, they're seeing that there is a lot of disparity in our country, and as a result of this crisis, that disparity is becoming more pronounced, and people are starting to realize that how unfair and unjust certain policies and procedures and things are. So what does that mean for leadership? Well, it places leadership in this really unique position of trying to not only guide followers through this crisis, but also trying to mitigate some of these gaps that we're seeing. And the students in the class have really talked about how they see crisis as being a situation that has reached a critical phase. The Oxford definition of crisis is the point of a decision, when a decision is necessary. And so right now, I think as a result of that, as a result of some of the inequalities that we're seeing, specifically in healthcare and education, and just the mere fact that this is a point where a decision is necessary, we are seeing a huge need for crisis leaders. And we are recognizing that what we're dealing with now in COVID-19, a crisis is definitely impacting multiple systems. We're seeing impact education, healthcare. We're seeing it impact the identification of essential workers. We're seeing it impact law enforcement. But what we notice is that there is a conflict in goals, values, and responsibilities of people. So this idea of systems impact it kind of goes back to this idea of social justice. So you can look at the various areas that are identified as social location or social justice. You can look at it as people who may be discriminated based on race, age, ability, religion, socioeconomic status. You could look at educational levels. So we are starting to see how those different areas have played a role in the resources that people have. I know many of us have seen how if you're wealthy or of in a privileged position, that you have an immediate access to COVID testing. Most Americans still cannot access COVID testing, or if they do access it, the test results take a while to come back. So the students in the class are really starting to notice how longer term increase in inequalities and neglect of certain groups called social locations has been exasperated. We are noticing these public service weaknesses that we have in our country. So one thing that I did want to bring up specifically in relation to crisis leadership, how are we handling all these challenges, is something that is called the boom effect. So when you look at the boom effect, you look at the boom being the crisis event. So in this situation, it is when COVID hit the United States, and how do people handle that? So there's two components to this boom effect. So you have the boom, which is the crisis event. Then you have left of boom and you have right of boom. So left of boom is the pre-event. It is it can be structural awareness. It can be when you're learning and you're identifying and you're trying to protect prior to the event actually happening. So this could be early on when our leaders were learning about COVID-19. They were learning about the virus itself and the potential dangers of it. To the right of boom is the post-event. And how are you going to help your followers as a leader? How are leaders going to help their followers make sense of the event? How are they going to help them make meaning out of the challenges that they've had? And so what we are seeing now, we're still kind of in the boom, but we are seeing, we're starting to move to the right of boom. We're starting to move to the after effect of, okay, is this our new normal? What cultural changes are we going to have? How are we going to fix these gaps and problems that are becoming very apparent in our society that have been essentially magnified as a problem as a result of this virus? And that's a challenge. And I think that's something that we are daily going to be seeking answers to. And we are able to analyze leadership in a different way than we ever have before. One of the reasons that we created this class is because it allows us to look at leaders making real-time decisions in a very, very chaotic world. And it's just something that's completely unprecedented that we have never been able to study before in our lifetime. So that in itself is actually pretty cool. But as we move to the right of boom, as we are learning, one thing that I did mention to my students is this idea of tragic optimism. It is an idea that was coined by Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. He was in Auschwitz, and he wrote a book that he remembered his journey through Auschwitz and said that your ability to choose how you respond to something is the last of the human freedoms. Regardless of what is going on around you, your ability to choose your own attitude is something that people can never take away from you. And he talks about this idea of tragic optimism, and he says that it's optimism in the face of tragedy and in view of the human potential, which at its best allows for turning suffering into human achievement and accomplishment, looking at the opportunity as a way to change oneself for the better, and turning these tragic situations or this crisis moment into responsible action. So as we move forward into the right of boom, I challenge you, captains, to take on Viktor Frankl's idea of tragic optimism. Look at ways that you can turn suffering into action and achievement and accomplishments. look at ways that you can take responsible action and perhaps apply yourself or help fix some of these areas that we have noticed are unjust in our country. But ultimately, I think what it boils down to is what President Tribble always challenges us to do as captains, and that's to live a life of significance. I think if you wrap that up, you wrap it up with tragic optimism as well as leadership, that's going to be helpful in navigating any crisis. So stay safe, stay healthy, and go Captains.